welcome to Comping California. Guess who we have in the house? Comping Colorado.
Hi, everybody.
In the West.
Thanks for letting me join, Renee. California is a hot one. Y'all like a lot of help. You've got great questions, so I'm just excited to be here and be a part of the conversation. And you have two of my favorites, so tell the people.
I'm telling people, first of all, welcome everybody. Cannot believe we are darn near at the end of June, which means we're almost halfway through the year. So for those of you who are tuning in, whether you're an agent, whether you're an investor, whether you're just tripping over this and want to get educated, congratulations. You've almost made it halfway through the year, which means that listen, games are won in the second quarter, third quarter, or I should say third and fourth quarter, second half, third and fourth quarter. So don't give up on yourselves. This is why we're here to educate. So two of our favorite people, and how we met is through astro flipping. So Corian and I are astro flipping students, as well as Amanda and Israel. Welcome, Amanda and Israel. So you guys live in California, in Southern California, kind of close to me, about an hour away. I'm in LA proper. What county are you guys in?
We're out in Riverside County, so we're just inside the Riverside County line, right next to San Bernardino, and yeah, about an hour from you. You're right.
Yeah, about an hour. So for those of you who do not know Southern California, there's like 5-6 total counties in all of Southern California. You guys are just right next door. We're neighbors. And so you and I both do business throughout, well, I can't say throughout California. I do Northern California. I live here in Los Angeles County, so I do business throughout Southern California. So of sorts, people would think, oh my gosh, maybe we're competitors, but I just never think of it like that. People want to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And guess what, guys? This is really how business is done. You know what? If somebody resonates with Amanda and Israel, so be it. They get the contract, they get to call me, and vice versa, right? So we are always calling each other and kind of like pinging on each other. And what do you think of this? And how about that? And when you're in business for any length of time, you'll come to find out that there really aren't that many people actually doing the business. There might be a lot of people that have licenses as agents. There might be kind of one-offs being transactional. But in the 19 years that I've had my license and I've been doing business here in Southern California, I've seen a lot of come and go. And I rarely see the people that stay. So you want to hit your wagon to wheels that people here that are serious about this craft and treat it like a business. And these two are doing exactly that. So let's give you guys a little bit of an introduction, because you're not specific to any one particular title, right? You're not just wholesalers. You're not just fix and flippers, but please let us know a little bit of background of who you are, because this is going to live on YouTube. So make sure you have a sense of, who we're speaking with.
Yeah, of course. You want to take it first, Israel, or you want me to go?
Sure. No, I mean, yeah, like you were saying, yeah, thank you for having us. We're super stoked to be here. We just saw you on Saturday, so that was pretty cool. So we're not just one thing, right? We're not just wholesalers. We do a little bit of everything. There's so many facets to this business, and we try to be organized and have a business, have a business plan, but there's so many avenues, right? I mean, I'm wearing the sub 2 hat, so I mean, we do a little bit of everything. Like I told you, I just got back from a home inspection for one of my buyers, so I do the retail stuff too. And I mean, we're licensed for mortgages and things like that. So yeah, I mean, there's so many facets to this business.
Goodness gracious, I think you just listed everything.
Poor Amanda,
too.
Right? Do you have your monkey in your little thing that you're doing now? So let me break this down just a little bit, because you said a lot, and obviously you and I know each other. A lot of the audience that comes on will know and decipher what it is that you're sharing. But let me break it down a little bit, especially for the newbie. So Sub 2 is another community, but it's also kind of an acronym of sorts, about what is a Sub 2 is a subject to the loan in place. That's creative financing. So we don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but that's one way to do business. Then there's wholesaling. Wholesaling is really a verb, not a noun. It's become a noun, a wholesaler. But really wholesaling is flipping a contract. So if you have a contract on a house and then you have a buyer, and maybe you're not a licensed agent, it's another way to get paid. You put a fee on top of it. We call that an assignment fee. So that is basically taking group A and group B and being like a matchmaker for properties. And so that is wholesaling. So that's also something that those guys do. And then Israel, you mentioned mortgage brokering. We'll leave that alone. Most people know what that is. And then you guys also flip. So not only are you looking for the deal, you also buy the deal and then transform the deal and put it back on the market. So that's the short version of what fixing and flipping is. I think the audience knows most of that. Did I check all the boxes? Did I forget something?
I think you said it way better than I did. You did a great job.
Amanda, what can you chime in, not only for what you do, but who are you and how'd you meet this handsome man?
Oh, that's a long story.
Was it at a house over a deal?
It wasn't. I mean, we actually met originally in high school, and then it kind of separated after high school, and then, believe it or not, reconnected over MySpace when that was a thing.
Wow.
Yeah, a long time ago. We're old. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you guys kind of broke down what we did, and I feel like, especially lately, I would say over the last year or so, we've really been honing in on building our buyers list and just making all those connections. This business is all about relationships, and so that's really what we've been laying the groundwork for. Over the last year, we've grown our buyers list to close to about 8,000 buyers in Southern California. So that's one thing that we're really going to town on, is we've been helping a lot of people find buyers for their deals. I love seeing deals with the possibility for us to flip it in mind, but we do have kind of a tighter buy box. So if it doesn't work for us, we could probably find a buyer if it's not us. So, I mean, we can help lots of people in lots of different ways. One thing that I'm often doing is helping people within Astro and Sub2 comp their deals and then sell their deals. So if anybody just needs feedback on a deal, wants me to kind of put a pair of eyes on it for them, that's absolutely something that we could do.
Woo. And listen, guys, let me break it down a little bit more, because remember, this is going to live evergreen. So when you say astro flipping, just for the audience that is not familiar with what astro flipping is, you can always ask, myself or Corianne, because we're more the consistent here. Although, of course, you can reach out to Amanda and Israel. That's a community that we have bought into. So you can show up on a Facebook page that is public, and then there's also a private community. So that's how we all met. And then for those of you who know Sub2 or Pace Morby, that is more creative financing. So just to break that down a little bit more. And then, as Amanda said, they've been in this last year or so building their buyer list, because it's two sides of the same coin, right? You can source an opportunity. Heck, you can be driving for dollars and see a really ugly, dirty house on a street that you just tripped over and write down the address or knock on the door, and maybe you're going to talk to the seller or get in touch with the decision maker of that property and get that under contract. And then you go, oh my gosh, what do I do next? Well, you call myself, or, you call Amanda or Israel, or you call both of us, because, just because she said she has 8,000 people, that doesn't mean that all 8,000 people are necessarily going to want to do business with her, because they may have not necessarily gotten that tight of a relationship. So just remember that. And then also, I may have a different buyer at the time. Guys, I often have buyers, as long as I've been in this business darn near 20 years, sometimes the buyers that do know, like, and trust me, they are just busy doing other things. They might be on other projects. They might be taking a break. So never assume that your buyer criteria or your people who are buying are just waiting in the wings for you to call them. You always have to be filling the funnel. You always have to be creating relationships. So whether or not it's the people that you're putting in your funnel, or whether it's not, it's somebody like myself who's creating a relationship with Amanda and Israel, who do have the 8,000 people, right? Because you have to come at this with an abundance mindset. You must. And if you're going to scale your businesses, it's really, it's in your best interest to actually think that way, because whether or not I split, like, let's break it down to how people really think. Let's get real. Whether or not I take my assignment or commission and I split it with Amanda, and I think, oh, geez, I just gave away half of my commission or half of my assignment. Guess what, guys? If you're going to scale your business, at some point, somebody on your team, you're going to have to pay. So I implore you to get used to, you're not making 100% of the pie. Plus, Uncle Sam is taking some of it. And if you're an agent, whether you're at a flat fee or a split brokerage, it goes to the excuse me, to them as well. So just sometimes I think newbies or even young people just think like, oh my God, I'm giving away my commission, I'm giving away my fee. Don't think of it like that. Restructure it as in, how can I create relationships that are going to better allow me to do more business more quickly? Because if Amanda has a buyer for me and I can just get through it and she can move it, I'm going to talk to more people to do more deals. Don't get stuck on too many deals. So I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but I really want to deconstruct what you guys are saying, because that's a part of what this show is as well, is not only just comping numbers and figuring that all out, but to think bigger, and because we're all agents here, like, how do we actually think, and what are we trying to create? We're creating relationships. And Amanda, you said it, it's a relationship-based business from day one and 19 years later. That's all it is, right? So anyway.
Amanda was one of the first people I ever reached out to like 2 years ago when I was trying to figure out the balance between having a license and being in the investment space. And she pointed me in the right direction. And so just to kind of tie two thoughts you had, Renee, together is that, yeah, you need to have a large database. What's a cheat to that for the newbies is to know the one person who has a large database. And that's why Amanda and Israel are here.
Amazing. There you go. Well said. And also the relationship that people have to that database. There are some companies out there that kind of tote having a lot of numbers in their database. And you want to ask the person if they're willing to tell you, how are you communicating with that database? Because if you're just blasting out information to that database, you're not actually curating relationships. You're just blasting out information. And I'll be honest with you, does that work? Sure, it's a numbers game. But at the end of the day, those of us that are still around, I'm tired of my inbox just being flooded with a bunch of stuff that doesn't pertain to me. It doesn't pertain to the buyers that I have. So that's another conversation for another day, but let that noodle around, because you want to get the right people, the right information. So something to consider. Anyway, speaking of that, how are you guys communicating with those 8,000 people? That's a lot of people. That's a lot of buyers.
Yeah. So, and this kind of goes back to our background having flipped houses. So a couple of years ago, all we were doing was flipping. There was a point, I think the very first wholesale deal that we did was in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And this kind of ties into something that you said, Renee. That first deal that we wholesaled, it was because we were in the middle of 2 flips and we had a VA cold calling for us. We got this other property, a third property under contract, which was not very far from us. It was in a nice area, nice neighborhood in Riverside. And we would have loved to take it on. It was a luxury house backed up against the golf course and just really, really nice house. And the timing, though, you mentioned a little while ago about timing. Like, yes, we would have loved to taken that on, but the timing wasn't right. We had our money tied up in 2 properties, so we couldn't take it on. So we had to scramble in that moment to figure out, how can we find a buyer for this? And I absolutely jumped onto Facebook and started posting the deal in a million different Facebook groups, trying to find a buyer. Eventually, we did get it assigned, and it was a nice little deal. That was our introduction to wholesaling. Of course, now that we are astro flipping students, we've learned so many more tricks to the game. So that was our first intro. So timing, it really, really is important. I feel like I just went down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I know, it unravels, doesn't it?
It does.
But what you said is important, right? So the audience members, because we never know who's really listening in and to what experience that they do have, or even those of us that are experienced, you can never hear the basics enough. At least I'm speaking for myself. Sometimes I forget the basics. And
Absolutely.
What I have to say about the basics is, if you guys are listening and you're hearing us throw around names like astro flipping and, oh my gosh, now I have to join that. Do I have fear of missing out on over here? It's a thing. It's really a thing these days. Like, I swear to God, you could spend your entire career in a conference room and never get any business done. And so it's really important that your time management is in order. And if you don't have the dollars, if you don't have the money, the dollars to spend on any one of these groups, which are not inexpensive. I mean, yes, they're all going to get sold like, well, you'll have to close one deal and it'll pay for it. But if you're not there yet, that's part of why, Corianne and I are presenting these educational moments so that you guys can meet us. You can see the face of, do you want to do business with us, and hitch your wagon to these wheels of experience And we've paid that. We paid our dues. We paid the money. I took my literal credit card and paid to be in astro flipping. If you cannot do that now, then learn from us. We're more than happy to teach you guys and do deals. Okay, that's number one. And if you just never want to do that and you only want to do one thing, like you're really good at finding deals, but you don't know how to find the buyer, you don't want to deal with all the systems, you don't want to manage people, you don't want to grow, I implore you to connect with any one of us, because this is how you're going to actually not stay silent and be frustrated. You can't do this business alone. You really can't. You know, you think you can, but you can't. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's another thing, is right, Renee? You don't have to join a mentorship, but plug yourself into people who are in those mentorships to just kind of bounce ideas from them and just siphon as much information as you can to eventually do enough deals to where you could afford to jump into one of those mentorships. But to go back and answer your question, Renee, my whole point in saying that was timing, number one, is key. Number two is, when we were flipping, we were getting a ton of emails from wholesalers. People would find out that we were flipping. We started getting a ton of emails. And at some point, it just came down to like, why are people sending me deals in Kentucky? Why are people sending me deals in Sacramento when we're in Southern California? And I'm just like, why are these people, sending me all these deals that are just, like you said, not relevant to me? This is not something within our buy box. This isn't in the area that we buy. Some investors have minimum criteria, like minimum square footage, minimum bedroom count, bathroom count, etc., that they use to buy. So what we've been able to do in our CRM is to take down a list of, I think it's like 8 or 9 items that I have my investors check off, and they tell me, this is what I want to buy. Some of them say, I'm not picky about square footage. Okay, fine. No preference. But what I'll do is, when we have a deal, I'll make sure that when I'm sending a deal out to my investors, it meets all that minimum criteria, because nothing would drive me more crazy than getting 20 deals only to find out that maybe 2 or 3 fit our criteria. So number one, that's the first thing. And I've had a couple of my investors reach out and say, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that you doing that, Amanda, because it saves me so much time. Instead of me sitting there looking at 10 deals in a day, you send me maybe one every 2 weeks. But I know it's going to be one that I want to look at, because you've taken the time to match my buy box to that deal and make sure that it's really something I care to see. So that's number one. If you're getting to the point as a wholesaler where you're just blasting every deal to every investor, that is the fastest way for them to disregard your emails and just start ignoring you. So that's number one, is it's a matter of respecting their time, is what it really comes down to. If you're not respecting their time and you can't make sure that you're only sending investors what they want to see, then they're going to get tired really fast.
See, and that just goes back to, I want to say it again, when I said it a little bit earlier, I call that a curating an opportunity, right? So imagine, let's use a restaurant analogy. Imagine that you go into a restaurant and you're like, I'm hungry, and someone just brings you some food. And then you're like, well, that's not what I wanted. And you're like, well, but you didn't tell me what you wanted, right? So now we're back and forth and back and forth. You see where the lack of communication goes. And if every time you went into that restaurant, that was your experience, you wouldn't be going back often enough. But for some reason in real estate, specifically in the arena of working with investors, not just wholesalers, but I'd say investors at large, it's accepted that everything has just gotten blasted out. I don't know where the pick up the phone and create the relationship has gotten lost, but somewhere it's gotten lost. So I think there's a happy medium in there, and part of it is your checklist. So say a little bit more about that, because I know that you have a customer relationship management system, or a CRM as we call it, and that you've kind of tweaked it, to your own benefit. But it sounds like you've got some fields, if you will, in the CRM that you start ticking, or do you have them fill it out? Like, is there a workflow there that also helps you with your time management?
There is a workflow, yeah. So we have a couple different ways to get it filled out. One is people could sign up on our website. Of course, they submit their information, but then there's a couple more steps that happen after that for us to just make sure that we're a good fit for each other. We don't let just any investor sign up to be on our buyers list. So we go through a process. And so in order for them to sign up, they're going to fill out, and I'm opening it right now just so I can tell you exactly what we have here, because these items are important. It's really important to see what somebody is buying and what that criteria is. Because again, at the end of the day, we just don't want to waste anybody's time. And okay, so here's what I have. So people are telling me how they like to purchase. I have some buyers who buy only cash. I have some buyers who only want creative deals. And then we have some buyers that want both. So that's one thing. The types of properties that they'll buy is really important too. We, for the most part, stick to residential, but from time to time, we'll get some people who just want land. Condos is another category. We have a few other ones, but I would say those are going to be the main ones: single family residential, condos and townhomes, and land. Another one that I have just as like a checkbox to see if somebody's interested in is fire burned homes. I'm sure you guys get this a lot. There's just not a lot of buyers who are interested in those fire burned homes. So if I know right off the bat who's willing to take a look at those, and of course there's always going to be a scale, right? There's a spectrum. There's minimal fire damage, and then there's like it's pretty much burnt down to the ground.
Yeah.
And so people are going to be different, but if they're at least willing to look at fire damage, it's a good thing to know. As I mentioned earlier, bedroom count, bathroom count. So that would just be like a minimum number for footage. We have price ranges, level of rehab that people are willing to do. We go from light, moderate, heavy, and then the highest one would be tear down or development opportunity. What else? And then the final one would be how many projects can you handle per month? We have some investors just doing one at a time. We have some who have a crew and they have the capacity to do 10 in a month because they have that big of a crew ready to go. Questions that we're asking people. When I am doing a little bit of dispo in Florida, so I will say, just for Florida, I'm always asking, are you willing to buy those wood frame homes? Because that's a big one in Florida. You have the wood frame home versus your concrete block construction. And so it's important to know who's willing to take what.
Beautiful. Well, hopefully the audience, if you guys got value from that, just this kind of intro conversation, because we're going to jump into some comping. And Corianne, if you would, can you set Amanda up for that while I just make a comment here? But you guys, smash the money button, the prayer hands, whatever emoji you feel like you're called to put in there. Let's get some activity because we want to make sure that the algorithm is making sure we're alive and have a pulse. And that also this is something that Corianne and I can see, and both Amanda and Israel as our guests, that this is actually bringing value for you. So Miss Amanda, are you open to doing a comp? And do we have an address, Miss Corianne?
Yes, we do. I'm curious, what do you usually comp with, Amanda?
My preference is the MLS, just because I have access to the MLS. So it allows me to really be tailored on what I'm looking at as far as like even the radius. That's a big one for me, is I'm always looking within a mile radius. Zillow doesn't necessarily let you do that. You kind of have to eyeball it. So MLS is my main one.
That's so interesting. I rarely hear that because the MLS can be such a jewel. But I'm ready for you. It's going to be 1525 Huntington, Hunt, INGTON.
And guys, I don't think this is going to make any difference if we, do a split screen with Amanda, because she is using her MLS versus on other episodes we've had Zillow, we've had Privy, and we've had, what's the other one? Redfin, thank you. So this isn't going to help the audience, but Amanda, if you can, walk us through whatever you're thinking, say it out loud.
Okay.
So 1525 Huntington Boulevard, and that's in Duarte, California.
You said it right, yeah.
Oh, good. Thanks, guys.
Southern California can be very odd with all the Spanish names. Yeah.
And I'm such a white girl. It's unfortunate. Sometimes I just can't make it happen.
And real quick, Renee, if you want to, I can totally use Zillow, just because I realize a lot of our audience is probably going to be people who are wholesaling, and I feel like Zillow would be helpful for them. You want me to use Zillow? I absolutely could do that.
Let's do it. We'll give people a little bit more visual, and it's kind of like for those of us that are visual as you're being auditory, saying what you're looking at, it's helpful. So yeah, if you would, can you do that, Ms. Corianne?
Okay.
Or let her do it.
So down at the bottom, if you hit present, right underneath the backstage, Should be right next to settings. You can choose what you're willing to show. And then once it
Okay.
pops up behind stage, I'll bring it up.
Alrighty. I'm gonna go with my Zillow tab. I'm just trying to find the tab because I have probably 27 of them open.
That's funny. That's exactly what I was going to say. Is I always try to find the tab too, because you guys do not want to see what's going on in this brain space.
But this is great. Even if we got to pause, it's like, hey, this is real life, right? So we're just keeping it real here. All right, here we go. Good stuff.
All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is just pull this up, pull up the property. You said in Duarte, and try to get some info on the house itself. And I'm not seeing it.
Is it your, because it's sold, or the beds and baths? It looks like your filters are, maybe that's part of it.
Oh, it could be. Yeah. Thank you.
So that's good too, guys. Remember, when you're using these systems, Zillow, and Privy and so forth, you've got to be aware of what your settings are, because sometimes, you know, you're like, where is everything? Why isn't this working? And these systems are very literal. So it's good to clear them out when you start over.
I think you're only looking at solds too. It might be active and or off market.
This just goes to show how often I don't really look on here.
I honestly don't think anybody would have a hard time watching you comp on the MLS too, because that gives you a peek into the kimono, as Renee says, to see what's going on in a realtor's head when they're also pulling CMAs, is what we call them.
Yeah, we can do both too. So we'll do this one on Zillow, and then I don't know if you're comfortable bringing up the your version of the MLS, but we can certainly do that as well.
Yeah, I could. I'm just, why is this not wanting to come up for me? But yeah, I'll jump over to MLS.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find it for you, just like anywhere.
Let's see.
Duarte.
So I'll go ahead and share my MLS instead.
You do have to do present again and then kind of do the whole thing all over.
Okay, no problem. Alrighty, so here we go.
Yoli, tell us more about this in the chat.
Is it not presenting? Am I presenting?
You are now.
Oh,
thank you.
There it goes. That took a moment. All right. Are we sure this is an address, guys? Because I don't see it coming up.
You know, when I go to try to look it up, I think it might be commercial. And we're not going to do commercial here because that's a whole nother kit and caboodle. Let's see. Let me just check one last thing. Will you try drive instead of boulevard?
Sure.
Let's see. And then that will be our last attempt.
There it is.
Hot tip. Thank you.
This was good though.
In the chat.
Good.
Knew
This
what
is
was up.
Yeah.
You could change the address.
Those little differences can. Oh yeah, it did change the address. What is going on? Nope, that is not it either. 1525.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Is
that's not
is that the actual numerical address, Yoli? Excuse me. No. It's land. What is he saying? It's land now. That might be part of it because now you're in single family. So now he's saying it's land. Well, this is interesting too, guys, because I'll comment on this. Oftentimes when this is the part where you want to get clear on whether you're working with investors or wholesalers. A lot of people are not terribly professional and they are just, I call it hot potatoing. So they get some kind of address and they just throw it at you, expecting you to do all the work. They don't tell you whether it's a single family home or whether it's land or any of those things. So you want to be clear before you take your human minutes and start coming into Zillow, or if you have access to the MLS, and start actually trying to do a comp. You know, all day long, people are sending me addresses, even other agents, they just don't know. And so they're throwing addresses at me, but I don't know what I'm looking at. I want to come at this like a surgeon. Is this a house? Is this a multifamily? What's happening, right? So you want to train your people that if they're going to consistently send you deals, this is how you prefer the deal flow to look. You know, I need this amount of information. We do spend a good amount of time of our time educating people. So my famous last words are, don't get mad, get creative. You know, a part of this job is being consistent and educating people about what your needs are. So don't assume that they are going to send you what you need. You've got to let people know what that is. Is this just not coming up?
I've tried a few different things and I've landed in all sorts of weird places. So I cannot confirm. And I say we move forward to a new
Let's
address.
move forward. Yes.
All right, let's do 4764 Wiota, Wiota Street in Los Angeles, California.
So let's do that. And I see Yoli said it was a motel, but now it's torn down just to land. So realistically, that is commercial. And also, guys, see, this is great. Actually, it's a great example that we've never had this before. That would be considered commercial. And the other thing, Yoli, that I would say in answering that question for you is when it comes to commercial, in my experience, this is my opinion, in my experience, commercial agents, they have LoopNet and Starlink, and I think not Starlink. There's another one. Anyway, they have a couple commercial MLSs, but a lot of commercial people, they want to double end deals and talk about relationships. They mostly do deals amongst themselves, and you're not really going to see the same access to information, even if you utilize Zillow. It's very much kind of all pocket listing deals. So my recommendation, Yoli, for you is to frankly get a commercial agent, you know, call up a commercial brokerage and ask for, is there somebody that does, you know, motels, or if somebody's looking for land, specifically commercial land, and try to get, you know, numbers that way. That's just my short answer for you. It's a whole other beast.
All right, so I have the property pulled up here. First thing I like to do is, I'm sure you guys kind of see me turning to the side here. What I like to do is just jot down the stats real quick on the property. So that would be bedroom count, bath count, square footage, lot size, year built is a good one. Year built, single family residence. I like to take a note of whether it is a single family or excuse me, single story or 2-story, because that does make a difference in our comps. And then also garage. Garage is another one that I like to look at because it does make a difference. And again, I'm looking in Realist, which is kind of like a part of our MLS here. So garage, I don't see it. Sometimes I'll look up parking and it'll show up that way. Where did it go?
Another thing while you find that, another thing to really look at, and that I like to do, is look at the street view on Google, because
yeah, that's what I was about to do.
Yeah, it's going to give you an idea of the neighborhood, and you know, if it's like on a main street, which is super important. So yeah, just want to throw that in there.
Oh, is this in Eagle Rock?
Mm-hmm. I grew up in Eagle Rock.
You did.
Oh, good old Billie Eilish's neighborhood. Hey. She made it popular.
And this is another kind of funky thing that happens a lot in Southern California is here it says Los Angeles, but then somewhere else it might say Eagle Rock. So this is kind of like the difference between cities and neighborhoods. So I'm looking at the zip code to make sure the zip code matches at least. That's one way to make sure this is the same house. And it looks like it is. So 90041. So here's the house. Oh, Yosemite. That's the street where my husband grew up.
Oh, look, you're right there. Israel, have you walked the streets? Were you tagging something on the street?
It's a funny question. I was walking down the street one time. I was maybe like 14 years old, and like some little cholo guy came up to me. I was coming home from like playing baseball, and he's like, "What do you tag?" Oh no. He said, "What do you write? What do you write?" Like meaning like, "What do you tag?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Right? No, I don't have a ride. I'm walking. Like I don't even drive."
He didn't
So I
get
didn't
it.
even understand what he was trying to tell me.
Oh, right over
He's
here.
too innocent for that.
I know. Oh my
All
God.
right. So looking at the house, we have a single story. So that was one of my reasons for wanting to take a look at it. But also, like Israel said, taking a look at the neighborhood and just kind of getting a feel for what's around there. So it looks pretty residential. I feel like I'm a little zoomed in. This might be a school over here, Caddy Corner. It is on a busy corner, though. It's something to note. And this is a building. Interesting looking building. So I wouldn't say this street is super busy, but just the fact that it has those double yellow lines, has, there's cross walks and lights here. It's a busier street. So I think that's something that will definitely come into play on our comps. But other than that, pretty cute little house. But let's jump back into the MLS and start taking a look at what we can find. So I am now within my MLS, and I'm going to specifically look for just closed listings, closed comps within the last 90 days is ideal. Now I'm going to show you guys how I always start my searches, but then sometimes we have to come back and adjust a little bit if we don't have enough. All right, so down here in the bottom left corner, you guys can see how many matches I have at any given point. So I'm going to try to match my bedroom count to 2, bathroom count 1, living area. I want to stay within about 250 plus or minus. So just going to punch that in real quick on my calculator. I don't always get super specific. Sometimes I'll just kind of guesstimate it. So I'm going to round the numbers a little. So 730 would be on the bottom end, up to about, let's say 12. I'm going to go up to 1250. It really should be 1237, but again, not trying to be super specific. Year built, we really should be within about, I know the Astro rules say 10 years plus or minus. For Southern California, sometimes that's really hard to do. 15 to 20 years for me still is viable in my opinion. I'm going to go 15 years plus and minus. But then it's an older house too, built in 1912. So if I was to go, let's say 1897, so we're talking about old houses here, up to, so this is 15 years plus and minus, and I can see that I have 5 matches. So
I love watching this because this looks just like my MLS, and I never comp in the MLS. And when you're doing it, I'm like, oh, it's not so hard. Okay, actually, yeah, you can see the numbers go down to something reasonable, This is helpful.
And then sometimes this happens and I'll get 0 matches, or sometimes it's only 1 match. So then I'll kind of adjust things. A decent number. 5, I feel like, is a pretty good number. All right, so let's take a look at the map. That's what I always like to see first, and just get an idea of where are these, how close are they. I'm definitely going to want to take the 2 that are closest to it into account a little more than the other ones. Of course, they all are important, but I would say the values here at the closer properties are going to be a little more heavily weighed. And let me just remind myself. So 1270 and $1 million for those 2.
How big is your radius to start? Were you at a mile?
Yeah, it's a mile radius.
Okay. Cool.
So sometimes, let's say if I did that same exact search and I got like 12, then I would really bring it into about half a mile, and really just narrow it down as much as possible. Because another thing with LA that tends to be a little wild if you don't know the neighborhoods is the neighborhoods can vary from just like a block or 2. This can be an excellent neighborhood, great school district, and you go down a block or 2 and it's like Skid Row. So just, know that happens. I feel like that's probably going to be something that happens everywhere, but I feel like that is especially pronounced here in LA. LA neighborhoods just vary wildly.
100,000%. I mean, almost across the street. And this is another reason why, depending on if you're doing things virtually or don't let California scare you. A lot of people don't want to come into California to do business. If this is like, that's reason number 100, I don't want to. That's the reason number 100, you call Amanda, right? Or myself, right? And then we're going to work together with you, because you gotta know what you're doing here. This, real estate is not one of these businesses where you just jump in like a side hustle. I think it gets marketed like that a lot, but it's important. And why is that important? Because I think that's part of why these contracts are getting canceled so often, because people don't really know the neighborhoods that they're getting things under contract. So it's okay to ask for help. We want to help you. We want to let you know, no, that house across the street isn't going to sell for that. So make sure you reach out to the community.
Okay, so one thing I just noticed is that a lot of these properties are actually coming up in a different zip code. So that's important to know, because the zip codes can change too, just like the neighborhoods. It's like a neighborhood thing. Some people, I've had a lot of buyers tell me, I only like this one zip code. And sometimes that's tied to the school district. Sometimes it's other reasons. But I am noticing that most our subject property is in 90041, and it looks like so far most of these are in 90042. So
Which
I'm not loving that.
That's really El Sereno for two, or part of it. It can be, which is a different neighborhood, right? So it's not per se. Yep. And this is the street by street part of it.
So I'm not loving these comps, and I'm going to go back to my criteria. Oh, this one is a tough one, guys. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just remove your build.
Does it matter the ADU possibilities that a zoning might have in California? Is that something you ever consider or is helpful?
Yes and no. I like to look at what the trends are in the neighborhood. If people are truly going to get, okay, so there's this neighborhood. I think it's somewhere in Lamert Park. Renee, don't kill me if I said that wrong.
Lamert Park, that's okay.
And so there's a property that we're really on the cusp of getting under contract. And one of the trends in that neighborhood was that they were taking their detached garages and turning them into ADUs. So what a lot of people started doing, knowing that that was a trend, was they would take those detached garages and they would stage them as usable space. They would stage them as an office or stage it as like a playroom for kids. But it was still just a garage. Like, it was a nice cleaned up painted garage, but it was still just a garage. But they were doing that because there were a handful of properties nearby where they would actually go in to the city and get it approved as an ADU. So I feel like that was a big thing a couple of years ago. I know when we were being pitched properties for us to flip, a lot of wholesalers would try to sell it that way, but it's just a possibility. Like, you really can't put value on just the possibility of it being like having the space. That's one thing that kept coming up, is it has enough room for an ADU. But number one, like, most flippers are not going to want to go through the trouble of building an ADU because there's it's a lot longer holding period, number one. And number two, some of the cities are just not super friendly with getting these things done. The permitting process for a lot of people can be like pulling teeth, and they just rather not. So if there's a flipper who specializes in ADUs, awesome. But I would say the majority of investors and flippers that I know prefer not to have to deal with those ADUs, because then we're talking about maybe a 6 to 9 month hold time instead of your average flip, which could easily be like 3 or 4 months. So that's a big difference.
Yeah. Huge
That's
difference.
huge. That's a huge comment, guys, because I even hear it. So I call as an agent when I'm prospecting other agents. I don't call as an investor. And even though they pitch me, I mean, I'm saying this lovingly, but agents are classic tail weavers, and one of the things you want to remember in your life is that hope is not a strategy. Fine. So can you convert a garage? Yeah, maybe. But it's not, don't hope that you're just going to come in and slap up some paint and call it an ADU. No, Amanda's correct. It is a garage that has some drywall and paint that is usable, but it's not technically an ADU. So there is a distinction.
For sure. Okay, going back real quick to my criteria. So I limited it now to where I'm just looking in our zip code. So I was gonna take this down to a half a mile, but I decided I'll not do that and I'll just go with the zip code instead. I also brought it up to where I'm looking for 2 and 3 bedroom properties. Ours is a 2 and 1, keep that in mind. And so now I'm looking for bath counts of 1 to 2. I removed my year built, and so now I have 4 matches for that. So it looks like this zip code is a little further north. I know previously we had some comps down here. That must have been that other zip code, the 90044. For what was it? 2.
Or
was
2,
the other
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So let's go to our results now and take a look. So I like that a couple of them are up to 1.2, but let's just take a quick look at what we have. Ideally, I'm looking for houses that have been remodeled. This looks like a house that has been lovingly cared for over the years, but definitely not a remodel. And 865 was a kind of a lower price among these ones. We have another one just from the outside. I can tell you this is most likely not a remodel. A little dated fixtures, dated floor, definitely a dated kitchen. From the outside, though, it looks like it's been pretty well maintained. It's not falling apart. Here's our third one. Oh, here's a nice one.
Oh, that is nice.
I'm on the fence about whether or not these are old or new windows. That's always going to be a telltale sign, is if it has new windows, oftentimes it's because it was part of a remodel. But so we have kind of maybe older floors, kind of old brickwork here. But sometimes I'm noticing this is kind of a trend, especially with these older houses in LA. Sometimes they like to keep certain elements like this just to give the house a little bit more charm. So I feel like this is a remodel.
Oh.
But then we get to the kitchen and we have a dated kitchen.
Here's something to note, though, Amanda, you would probably agree with me that the east side, so the east side is like Northeast LA. The neighborhoods specifically are like Glassell Park, Eagle Rock, Mount Washington. This was originally an artist colony, like when these neighborhoods got developed, and it never went away. There's a lot of artists, a lot of indie rockers, a lot of kind of funky punk rocker types. They want to live on the east side, so they're okay to have these kind of bathrooms kept like this. So it's kind of a 50-50, knowing, again, back to the micro markets and who the end buyer is going to be and what they'll withstand. People like in Santa Monica, in Beverly Hills, they don't want to see this. East side, they're okay with it.
For sure. And that's another thing, is sometimes it's just sort of a style thing. Some people like this eclectic style where if you can give me something that's dated, but it's been well cared for over the years, I love it. But then, not every buyer is going to agree with that. But what I like to really look at is the property well maintained? I'm kind of on the edge. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it looks almost like a crack down the middle of these tile. But oftentimes I do see these older looking kitchens and bathrooms, but they look pristine, and so something like that, buyers are all over. If the house is intact, well cared for, you don't have issues, this tells me there might just be some foundation issues. So that is not a small thing to overlook, especially as a flipper, right? We want to make sure that these big things are called out. Yeah, so definitely not a complete remodel, but it's cute. It's a cute house. So this is one of our 1.2s. And here's our last one, our fourth one.
To those that are not used to LA, some of this stuff just goes like, what? The slightly dated house with a crack in the bathroom and looks like your pretty average standard family home is 1.2.
Here's what's interesting is when I started, because I know Israel said he grew up in this neighborhood. When I got my license in 2005, a house like this was probably in the 300,000s. And so when you're an investor, particularly a buy and hold investor, when you're looking at a neighborhood to invest in, the rule of thumb is every 10 years it'll double. And so anybody that did buy in the Northeast LA neighborhood, your investment should have already doubled twice at this point. So
Mm.
yeah, it's weird. It's still weird for me. I sold these houses when they were in the $300,000 and $400,000, and that's what they were in this condition. And now they're stinking $1 million too. And I'm like, oh my God. So even outside of somebody who's living in, LA in this part of this neighborhood, it's wild. But you know what? This is real estate. This is real estate, because you can go back and look at, the solds of some of these homes in these neighborhoods. So you're always looking for the up and coming neighborhood, to where, if you're going to buy and hold, where can it double it every 10 years?
Yeah,
in any city.
absolutely.
And obviously, we're
Alright.
interrupting you like crazy, but what should our guests who are watching kind of aim for per property and the amount of time they spend to get to their after repair value and MAO? What do you suggest, or what do you find is on average what you do?
How much time to spend comping each property?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, probably closer to 10 minutes. I like to try to be closer to 5, but this is the thing, like we get to where we're looking at properties and there's just so much variation and so many decisions to make on like which properties do I even include, which ones should I not include. For example, going to my fourth comp here, this is a 2-story house, and I'm inclined to say I kind of don't want to put this in, although I like the price point, and I'm sure that's going to be helpful if I'm trying to get my ARV as high as it can possibly go. But at the same time, it's a 2-story, and it is a different style. This is more of a I would call it like almost a semi-Spanish style, versus our property back here is not. It's a little. I don't even know if I want to call it a craftsman, but
I
maybe
think
like
they call them California bungalows, because it's not technically a craftsman. I think that's the name of it.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a different style, and Spanish style tends to always just sell for more. So yeah, I'm inclined to not use this one. But there's just so many details to consider. And this is why Southern California is a bit tougher than other places, other metro areas that were built in more tracts, like Phoenix, where you can easily find houses that are super similar within a block or two, quickly grab your comps, move on to the next one. Southern California was built very differently, and over the span of, the last century and a half. And so we have properties like this that are 1912, that we have to kind of figure out which ones are we using, which ones are we not using. So going back to my list though, I want to say these are probably my 2 best comps, are these 2 middle ones. So let me kind of break it down and see how I want to do this. So if you guys notice, this is a 3-bedroom and 1.5 baths. And our comp is, or our subject is 2 bedrooms. And so this has 1 additional bedroom. At this price point, I'm going to say I'm going to reduce this by about $40,000 for that extra bedroom. I'm just taking note of whatever adjustments I might need to make. Another thing to consider is that my year built here, this property is a bit newer. Our subject property was built in 1912. This comp is built almost 30 years later, right? 35 years later. So it's a big difference, but I guess relatively, considering, they're both really old compared to now,
Yeah.
I think it's still usable. Let's see, lot sizes are comparable. They're both single story. The other big thing is going to be that the size is that our subject is 987 square feet. Our comp here, 1153, so almost 200 square feet bigger. So in cases like this, I like to break it down by the price per square foot. So here's my adjustment. I'm doing this price, so $1,115,000 minus my 40,000 adjustment for the extra bedroom, puts me at $1,075,000, and then I'm going to divide this by my price per square foot, so 1153, and that gives me a 932 price per square foot. So that's just one of them. I'm going to do that again for this property. So we have a 2-bedroom, 2 bath, so we have 1 extra bath here. And so I'm going to take our price of 1.211. I'm going to deduct I'll call it 25 for that other bathroom. Again, just considering what the price point is. So 25. Oh.
To make this a little harder for you, not that it's.
Yeah.
So, how much are you giving the neighborhood? How much weight are you giving the neighborhood? You know, because you can tell it's a different neighborhood feel. You know, here
In
you're
this one?
on the street. Yeah, this one looks more of a neighbor. You know, your typical neighborhood. Over here, your subject is on that main corner.
I will get to that.
Okay.
So that's usually one of the last things that I'll consider. And it's more of a percentage adjustment that I'll do at the end. Okay, so let me get my price per square foot here. I said I have 1.186 after I did deduct for that extra bathroom. And then I'm going to divide by my square footage, which is 1241. 955. So I'm right in the same range. The first one was 932 a square foot. This one's 955 a square foot. Giving me an average of 943. So I'm going to apply that and see what I get for our comp now, or excuse me, for our subject. So 943, and our subject square footage is 987. So that puts me at 930. Now, to answer your question, Israel, regarding the neighborhood, yeah, you're right. This property, it was on a kind of busy intersection. I mean, this looks like a school right here, so I can only imagine 2:30 p.m. rolls around Monday through Friday, and this intersection, I'm sure, gets busy with not only cars, but also foot traffic and people walking home. And there's a bus stop right here. So, yeah, there are some things to consider about that. I know I'm pretty sure the Astro deduction for this is 20% for Southern California. And again, at this price point, I feel like that's a huge deduction. So I would only give it maybe a 10% deduction for that. So,
you know, and the other thing is, like, even for this neighborhood, you know, you see these $1 million price points for these essentially smaller homes. If you can even get this with a 9 in front of it, and knowing that it's going to push the price up, but that's not a bad idea. Anyway, thoughts on that, Amanda, when you're doing this?
Yeah, real quick. So once I do that 10% deduction because it's on that busy intersection, I'm getting 837. I wouldn't mind rounding that number to let's call it like 850. I think you can get 850 for this because it's on the smaller side. And that was another thing that I didn't really talk much about. It was that a lot of the comps were just bigger. They had a bigger footprint. This house is only 987 square feet. All of our comps came in a bit higher. So it's important to take note that that smaller square footage is going to get less. And look at this one. This one was 755, sold for 865, not fixed up. But then again, we have a different architectural style. Yeah, so yeah, I think.
And just to clarify, is that 850 your pickup price or your after repair value?
That's going to be my after repair value. Well, you know what? Hold on. There are some other adjustments that I haven't done. Because here's one thing is we never had any true rehabbed property. None of these houses that came up as our remodels were rehabbed. I mean, it's cute, and you can tell they painted here and they try to stage it a bit and make it look cute, but it's not a true remodel. So given that factor, I would want to add my typical number is about 8%. I add 8% considering that we need to do a full remodel, but then it's on that corner, so it drops it about even. So it's just about a wash, honestly. So with that, I think we can go back up to right around the 930 that I saw price per square foot.
And I wasn't too far off, right? Just knowing the neighborhood, right, Amanda? Like, you broke it down because that's what this show is about. But I actually started my career on this side of town, and so I can probably do the math in my head just because. But that's not a brag. It's just to say, guys, this is the kind of stuff you need to know. You need to know these neighborhoods. So whatever you're choosing, even if you're doing just dispo and you're doing it like across the country, you really need to get, good on these neighborhoods and these cities and these micro markets, unless you're going to pick a city, like Amanda said, like a Phoenix or maybe parts of Texas, maybe even parts of Utah, where they were just newer built in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and they're more track homes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys gave me a tough one.
Yeah,
I loved that though, because that really, we got to hear your processing, and it allowed us to see the difference between hey, I know this neighborhood, I'm guessing this range, and then you also broke down those numbers for us so that we could see how you would get to that. And that's sort of the beauty, is that when you're really working a market, you need both, right? Like, you need to find out, okay, this is generally the numbers I would think. Now let's go find out if there's motivation. After you find out motivation, this process that we just saw is that like slow breakdown to really nail down your number. That's so helpful, Amanda. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, we're right at the top of the hour. I don't think we have enough time to do another one unless there's one that is super quick, but that's up to you guys. You've been generous with your time, so I want to make sure we respect that.
The beauty is
if we have another one, we can try.
Say again. Wait, Corianne, what's that?
I said, and the beauty is we come back every week. So if we didn't get your address, make sure you come back next Wednesday. Let's do a quick one here for Richard.
Yeah.
It's going to be 1833 San Anselmo Street in Fairfield, California.
Is that Northern California? I think it is.
Ooh.
Central. You guys, if also at the end, we'll make sure to put Amanda and Israel's contact information, get with them, get with me, whatever. I keep saying that because we're basically in the same neighborhood. So whomever you resonate with, because I do see other addresses, in the chat. So we want to make sure that just because it's not done live, that you aren't left hanging. So you guys know how to find me. You can get me on Instagram or Facebook. I'm the only one in the world with this name. And then Amanda and Israel will leave their contact information. Of course, I'm not leaving you out, Miss Corianne, but you don't know this neck of the woods. Come on now.
Oh yeah, no, y'all, you got to hit me up for Colorado. That is my bread and butter. If you need any help in Colorado, you can find me at Deals at Close with Kickflip. I'll drop it in the chat. And Renee, while she's kind of pulling this up and we're going to comp it quickly, we're looking at like fully combining consistently the comp in California and the comp in Colorado. And what that means is we really need our audience to help us out and help us name this sucker. Because in a lot of ways, like you and I are definitely the West, we're that unicorn agent, but we want to bring all of that value with some quick comps and being able to look at addresses in both states. So audience, any ideas what we should name this as we combine it?
Yeah.
Please drop it in the chat. We need your help.
Let that noodle on. And the way it started, at least for myself, because Corianne had her partner, Austin, kind of as her sidekick. And then I started bringing people on as guests. But the truth is that there's not as many people that know how to comp or willing to give their time. So we may have some, repeat performers coming on as guests. And so we can get through these a lot more quickly and set the tone. So we can do some, in the West, be it Colorado or California. And even if there's some rogue, Utah, or I don't know, anybody's really doing New Mexico, but maybe some Arizona. So let that noodle around, guys, and if you've got something, put it in the chat next week, so that we are combining forces, as Corianne said, to bring you guys even more value.
Austin's the number guy, and he lives in California too. So we're basically going to share his brain because, man, he's good at comps, and thank goodness.
Amen to that. I've never actually comped on my own stinking show. I should give myself the highlight. So you guys
we'd love to see you comp. That'd be nice.
I know. I comp like Amanda. Sometimes, man, on that east side like that, it takes me a minute. I'm doing Amanda, you and I comped basically the same way. It probably would have taken me a solid 10 minutes or so without talking to do that.
I like to try to get through it in 5 minutes, but look at this neighborhood, guys. You can tell it's in a little track neighborhood. Yeah. So I'm hoping because of that, this should be a little faster. So let's see what we get here. I kind of just went 300 square feet up and down from the subject property. The subject is 1686. Let's do my year built here. It was built in 1961. And just to be quick about it, I'm going to go 1941 to 1981. Give myself a 20-year plus and minus range. Last 90 days, single family homes within a mile radius. And I'm only getting one match right now. So let's see, how can I might need to go a little bit further back in time. I get two. Okay, so let's see what my quick results look like.
I love a good track neighborhood. Colorado has the exact same issues where it's so old and cowboy town that every other house looks different. And I love a track neighborhood, man. It's the best.
Makes it so much easier. So we have a house that you could tell is not remodeled, but that they've loved it and cared for it over the years. You could tell it's been painted. It looks like newish carpeting. I could already tell the kitchen has been redone at some point. Not recently, but at some point. We have granite countertops. So I'm going to guess maybe even original cabinets, but newer countertops. Still not a full remodel though, but it's well cared for. Okay, so this is a decent one. And 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet. So it's a little bit bigger. And the lot size is exactly the same, built in 1950. So only 11 years difference. Here's my next comp. It looks like another track home. Decently maintained. Newer countertops and newer cabinets. So again, not brand new, but you could tell somebody redid this. I'm going to guess 10, 15 years ago.
And somebody might think, why? Well, it had tile backsplash. I mean, you can maybe say, argue, subway tile is a backsplash, but just kind of the big, bulky, things like that. There's not really an answer, guys. I think this is the art of doing comping, is that when you look at so many houses over time, and remember, Amanda and Israel are flippers, so they're looking at trends. This is something else, watch some of the programs, look at some of the architectural magazines, see kind of what the trends are. And that's where that comment came from. So you want to think through all these filters. And if that's too much for your brain and you're like, I can't think that much, again, reason number, 500 to hook up with people that are in these micro markets doing business so we can help you with that. So you can learn along the way.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to take the average price per square foot among both of these properties. So at about 367 would be my average. And here's kind of like the final piece. So once I calculate this out, use the 367.5 and apply that to the square footage, I'm getting 620. I think that's a little high for this area. So I like to just kind of round that. And I would say that this is solidly a 600K ARV for this property. If I wanted to be really nitpicky, I could bump that up a little bit, but I just don't know if an appraiser would see it the same way. So I think on this one, we're right at about 600K, just because it's bigger than the two comps that came up. So our subject property is 1686, so really close to 1700. And both of these were a little bit smaller. So I think we can be right at 600K.
Boom. So there you go. That was a beautiful example of older architecture in a specific micro market where we could see, gosh, on that side of the main drag or this side of the main drag, north, south, east, west of a main drag, that it really matters. And then sometimes with these little, like you said, these little track homes, like see how much more quickly that went by. So it's not Amanda's skill. She's highly, highly skilled. It has a lot to do with these micro markets and these neighborhoods. So even when you choose a neighborhood to do, or an area like, LA, well, LA is like a bunch of different neighborhoods trying to be a city, so there's a billion micro markets, right? So if you do find something or someone brings something your way, to make sure if you've got any question to please, reach out again to the community, because you can see how challenging seasoned folks, how long, it took to do both, right? So, if you're just starting out, it might take you half an hour to even do a comp or longer. And don't get frustrated with yourself, because it is something that you have to learn how to do. And the only way out is through. You can only learn it by doing it. So please take that on for yourself as part of your career and business. Miss Corianne, we are well past the top of the hour.
Yeah, we are. And okay, so huge thanks to Israel and Amanda. Thanks for sharing your brains. I mean, honestly, I really do mean it. It means a lot to me that years ago you followed up with me and you helped me, and I know that same love is continued to pour into so many people. So thank you. Thank you for giving your contact information. Y'all, you need to use it. Make sure you're writing this down. Make sure you're taking down their email and be respectful of their time, and make sure you're bringing them some deals too, right? Like that's what we're all here for. So with that, we will be back next week, same time, new name, and combining both states. And yeah, everybody go keep working. Go get your deals
Keep
done.
working.
Make it
Keep
all
bringing
happen.
some deals. Make some money. I will not be here next week. Miss Corianne and Austin will be here holding down the fort. We have another special guest who's making a second appearance, and he's a young whippersnapper, but he knows what the heck he's doing. He's also here in Southern California. I'll be traveling. So the next time you guys see me, this will not be my background, but I'll let you know where I'm going later. Anyways, thank you so much, Amanda, Israel. Appreciate you both. I've learned a
Thank you
lot.
guys for having us. This was fun.
Definitely.
Sure.
Looking forward to do some business with you guys.
Likewise.
Looking forward to it.
Beautiful.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.